Good morning from Brooks River.
Good morning from Brooks River.
This is Ranger Mike Fitz.
This is
at
Ranger
Katmai
Mike
National
Fitz
Park and
at
Preserve.
Katmai National Park and Preserve.
For the next hour or so, I'm going to try to do a little play-by-play and narration of the bear activity that I see from my vantage point, standing on the wildlife viewing platform at the mouth of the Brooks River. I won't be monitoring comments on Explore.org and answering questions directly, but hopefully I'll get to answer as many questions about the bear activity that you're seeing in the moment as possible. Right now, I can only see a couple of bears in my line of sight. It's pretty quiet this morning, but we'll see what happens over the next hour or so. So it's late September, September 28th. We should be kind of approaching peak bear activity along the river as far as the number of bears go. So it's a little surprising to me that I'm not seeing as much activity. So we'll stand by and wait and see if anything comes close. Right now, the closest bear is out in the mouth of the river, and that ubiquitous 410. She's an adult female, probably the oldest adult female that we have here at Brooks River. And while I'm thinking of it too, you're going to hear some crinkling from time to time. It's misting. As you can see, the weather is not clear. It's definitely very wet. So I have some plastic bags covering the camera equipment to keep those things dry. So if you do some crinkling, those are probably those plastic bags that are blowing in the wind. Most of the bears here at Brooks River will fish a significant amount upstream as well. 410 seems to be a little bit of the exception. We almost never see her moving out of our line of sight upriver at this time of the year. She'll fish at Brooks Falls in July. I know a lot of you who watched the cams in July got to know her fishing at Brooks Falls at that time of the year. But right now, she has made really the mouth of the river her home range. In fact, yesterday she was either fishing in the mouth or she was sleeping in front of Brooks Lodge right on the beach. So she has not moved very far really in the past month or so. Almost everything that I can see within my line of sight is where she has been. So the mouth of the river, a little bit further upstream, but she has not, as far as I know, disappeared out of our line of sight upstream. She fished at the mouth of Brooks River. That gives you an indication of just how many dead fish are out here. And if you were able to take a boat or a canoe out there, you'd find many salmon carcasses floating on the bottom of the stream, or laying on the bottom of the stream, excuse me, out where she's eating now. The different types of gulls that we have here have been quite active this morning. You're probably hearing some glaucous wing gulls calling. Gulls are here. There's also a couple of sizable flocks of Bonaparte's gulls, especially further upstream, and we'll try to take a look at those, I think, later in the broadcast. There was also a falcon that was here chasing them, and I haven't seen that falcon in about 15 to 20 minutes or so, but I'm scanning for that as well, because of course bears aren't the only things that are here that are of course trying to make a living. The birds certainly are, and the birds are certainly subject to predation, so they're very watchful for birds that might try to attack and kill them and eat them. Oh, and there's another bear that came into our line of sight here. A little bit closer than 410. This one's just right across the river from me. And it's a pretty big bear. Try to follow it here. I'm also going to try to look through my binoculars. Brothers. I think this looks like number 83. There's also a bear that will fish at Brooks Falls. He was up there yesterday. Of course, he utilizes the mouth of the river too to scavenge for dead and dying salmon. If he's up at Brooks Falls, he's probably not looking for a dead fish. He's probably hoping to catch a more live, vigorous fish. Yesterday, I did see him catch one silver salmon up at Brooks Falls. And there's not that many silver salmon in the river compared to sockeye salmon, but they come later in the year. They're bigger, and they spawn a little bit, or at this time of the year. But since they're fresher, they contain a few more calories than the sockeye. So some of the bears do prefer to try to catch and eat the silver salmon. Of course, I don't really know for sure, but it doesn't look like 83 has been swimming in water. He doesn't look quite wet enough. So he could have just woken up from his overnight sleep. And you can see that it's extremely easy for bears to find dead and dying salmon. So the meals are not hard to come by. Even younger bears that can't compete, for a fishing spot at Brooks Falls in July when the salmon are trying to migrate beyond Brooks Falls. Right now, they're easily able to pick up a dead and dying salmon on the edge of the river, on the edge of the lake. It just takes a little bit of time to patrol those areas and find the salmon. An adult bear in his teens, he is, of course, he often visits the same places over and over and over again. He's very experienced, knows where the fish tend to collect, knows what he has to do to go and find them. You can see he's already attracted at least one glaucous wing gull. Almost every bear that have its own escort of gulls. Talked about this last week, but of course the bears help to distribute the energy of salmon throughout the ecosystem. If they're catching a live salmon, oftentimes they're leaving parts of the carcass behind, and that makes that available to the scavenging birds that are in the area. Even the dead fish, it's very difficult for those gulls to break through the skin of a dead sockeye salmon. The salmon skin is very tough. So when the bears partially consume the carcass, that leaves a lot of leftovers, and that's of course very beneficial to these other scavenging birds. Okay, and virtually every gull so that means there's probably a bird of prey, a raptor, whatever you want to call it, in the vicinity. I'm looking for it. Oftentimes that means there's a bald eagle that's flying through. Bald eagles will attack and kill gulls. It could be that falcon, and that falcon that I saw earlier today was just about as big as the gulls, so it might be a little hard to spot. But again, you're watching the cams, you all of a sudden see every gull in your line of sight just take off and start to fly. That means there could be a predator, an aerial predator, coming in their direction. It's going to be somewhat hard to tell just how much of these fish 83 is consuming. He's not carrying it to the bank where you can see it well. Almost seems like he's nibbling on them more than anything else. And he also might not be, picking up whole fish in that spot. I think the first fish that he found certainly was a whole fish, but these others, they look like partially eaten, partially consumed old sockeye salmon. But over the course of a morning, a bear like this can pick up easily a couple of dozen, either wholly consumed, whole fish or partially consumed fish. When that happens and you multiply, let's say like a whole fish might be 2,000 calories or so, even though, if he has half a fish, that's 1,000 calories. So if he's eating a couple thousand fish just in the morning session, then he's taking in 20 to 30,000 calories very easily. And of course, that's not going to be the only time during the day that he's fishing. He's going to be fishing later in the day too. So these bears continue to take in massive amounts of food to put on body fat that allows them to survive winter hibernation. It's starting to rain a little bit harder here. I'm going to do some adjustments on my plastic bags. While it is raining, I'm probably going to do minimal camera movements. Try to keep water off of the lens. It's going to be important for me, and also keep water off of the electronic bits in the camera too. From a bear cam perspective, though, 83 is sometimes a good bear to watch. If we're looking for minimal camera movements, he tends to investigate. It seems like almost every fish in certain areas. So this area, just on the river side of that trail where he's sitting right now, tends to collect a lot of salmon. I wouldn't be surprised if he turns upstream, goes into that channel that's behind him now, or maybe comes a little bit closer to us. And hits the eddy kind of on the downstream side of the grassy island to the left. Those are places that he visits regularly. Those are places that regularly collect dead and dying salmon. As far as other bear activity goes right now, just 410 out in the mouth of the river, and that's it. Again, this is surprisingly quiet for the end of September. Of course, the fall colors right now are quite good. They're fading, not as vibrant maybe as they were last week. But the hillsides are still fairly golden. you're going to be hearing a vehicle come into the scene here. So if you're wondering what that rattling noise is, that's one of the many vehicles that we use around here to transport people and equipment. So 83's slowly working his way upstream. But again, I think this really does demonstrate just how easy it is for the bears to find fish. And he probably could sit in that spot all day, let fish come to him, and make a good living from it. The salmon spawning activity upstream is still fairly heavy. It's fairly heavy at Brooks Falls. It's fairly heavy in the upper river above the falls. It's also fairly heavy downstream of the falls. Not quite as far downstream as here. A lot of salmon don't really spawn in this area where I happen to be standing. But there still are a lot of fish that are in the act of spawning, and still a lot of fish that have yet to spawn. So bears still will be able to find plenty of food for the next couple of weeks. Again, he's a creature of habit. Was just on the little bit of the far side of the river where dead and dying salmon collect. He knows that dead and dying salmon collect in the spot that he's at right now. Did a little bit of snorkeling, sticking his eyes under the water, looking for any fish that can't swim away. And he's walking in a spot that really is covered in salmon carcasses. Most of them have been worked over by bears, but it's early in the morning. Salmon do continue to spawn overnight. They continue to die overnight. So in the morning there can be a lot of freshly dead salmon that accumulate in these eddies and side channels where the river current is not nearly as strong. Looks like he might come a little bit closer. You can see how wide his ears are on his head. Younger bears are going to have their ears perched much higher on their head. The skulls of bears, they tend to continue to grow as they age, and the ears, they tend to be more wide set on adult bears, especially mature adults, than on younger bears. You can also see just a little bit of a mark on top of his hips there. That's a scar. He had a fairly large wound there in July, but it's healed up to be barely noticeable now, just a small scar. As you can probably hear from the microphone, it's a little breezy this morning. It's not a moment. It looks like another rain shower is going to be moving through in just a couple of minutes here, though. Of course, the bears, they don't really mind rain. They're in the water all the time, so the rain doesn't really bother them. Wind oftentimes can, it seems to maybe affect their behavior. They're so dependent on their sense of smell that in very windy conditions they seem to, I don't necessarily know if I should call it skittish, if that's the right term to describe their behavior in windy conditions. But they certainly do seem like they have a harder time picking up the scent of whatever is catching their attention in very windy conditions. Yeah, so it's starting to rain once again. Maybe we'll take a break from 83. I'll point the camera's lens away from the direction of the rain. It is, if you're watching the camera, it's kind of blowing from right to left. Excuse me, left to right now. So kind of away from that rain. We'll go downstream here, take a look at 410. She was further out in the lake. She was sleeping on the beach when I came across the bridge this morning. .410, another very experienced bear here. Like I mentioned before, maybe the oldest known bear on the river, thought to be a spring cub in the late 1980s. And it's always hard to tell what pose they strike when they sit and catch a fish like 410 has done. I think 410 is just sitting on her behind, probably sitting upright. As she eats that whole salmon. Water depth in this area where she's swimming varies. She's probably partly walking right where she is. If she were to move just a little bit further out into the river, away from the grass, then she would be completely swimming. And she was definitely doing that when she was out in the lake. But even out in the lake, there are many submerged gravel bars, and the bears can find some shallow spots out there to stand quite easily. So they're not always swimming, even though they may be 100 meters from shore in some cases. So 410 oftentimes sticks her muzzle up in the air when she chews and when she swallows. Not sure why she does that, but that's a fairly distinctive feature of her. She's often recognizable in silhouette because she likes to strike that pose. So she's on the downstream side of that little grassy island. Just like 83 was doing, he was on the downstream side, the sort of the lee side of a larger grassy island on the upstream side of the bridge where I'm standing. Again, each one of these bears knows exactly where salmon carcasses are likely to collect. And while they may not find success in each one of those spots each time that they visit, bears have long memories, they're very smart animals. They only need to associate a place, a location, a scent with food once, and they remember it, and they're likely to visit those places over and over and over again. Those are the reasons why we're so careful about food storage here at Brooks Camp, why you should be very careful about food storage wherever you happen to be. If you live in bear country or you like to recreate in bear country, then you should always make sure that you are taking the necessary precautions to keep food away from bears. And we've been focused on 410 for quite a while. 83, the other bear that I was looking at, that adult male, he's kind of moved out of my line of sight. He's not too far away. He's just hiding behind some grass. So I'm keeping an eye on where he's going. And then we have another adult female that's coming to our view. So I'll pan over to her. Take a look and see what she's up to, which you can probably guess is she's up to looking for salmon. So this looks like number 171. She's a younger adult female. In July of last year, July 2014, she had 2 cubs. By the fall of 2014, she had just 1 cub, and this year she returned without any cubs. So we think that, we don't know why or how, but it's quite likely that she lost her entire litter. Maybe she's just coming down to the river for her first meals of the day and has already found a salmon too. And I think we've been able to see each one of the bears that I've been seeing this morning just walk right up to the edge of the river and find a meal. So again, food is abundant. This is the season of plenty for Katmai's bears especially. If you're just tuning into the broadcast, again, my name is Mike Fitz. I'm a park ranger at Katmai National Park and Preserve. This morning, I'm just going to try to narrate some of the bear activity that I see out here at Brooks River. Try to identify a few of the bears that we see. Discuss any of their behaviors that they're demonstrating. I won't be monitoring questions on explore.org for this chat. So please sit back and just enjoy the scenes. There will also be plenty of time where I will be quiet, and I just want to give you the opportunity to listen to the sounds that we have here at Brooks River. It is fairly quiet here, except that I have wrapped around the camera equipment that tend to be rattling. But overall, it is a nice quiet morning on the river. Bears survive. They're not going to visit a berry patch, let's say in early spring when they first happen to come out of their den. They're not going to visit a salmon stream that doesn't have any salmon in it and spend considerable amounts of time there fishing if the salmon aren't there and the salmon aren't accessible. So certainly bears remember where they find food, but the time of the year where that food is available to them is extremely important. Clean behavior by 410 here, sticking her face in the water, patrolling areas where she's likely to find salmon. course, oftentimes they can't really determine the edibility of their catch right away. So you will see bears, like 410 has just done, I think, a couple of times, stop. They feel a fish with their paws. They see it with their eyes. They pick it up, and then they smell it to see whether or not it's too far gone for them to consume. Salmon spawn and die, and they become less available. There's just, eventually over time, this October, there will be less fish in the river, less fish for the bears to eat. The bears will, they'll become, I guess, a little less picky about it. And they're going to be consuming, any of the rotting flesh that they can. But right now, I think most of the bears can certainly afford to be a bit choosy, because there is just so much food and water. Still just 3 bears in my line of sight, with 410 closest, 171, that younger adult female, kind of out in the edge of the lake, near where we saw her before. And then number 83, Ustream, almost out of my line of sight now. You can see that 410 did not consume that whole fish. She ate the skin. It looked like she ate the tail. She left a lot of the hard parts, the backbone, a lot of the flesh too, but certainly the head and the gill plates and the jaws. She's approaching our floating bridge. Some bears will not go under the bridge. The bridge is on pontoons, if you're not familiar with this structure. So some bears do not like to go underneath the bridge. They'll always walk around. 410, on the other hand, I don't think I've ever seen her really shy away from going underneath the bridge. Occasionally, bears will show interest in the bridge. Sometimes they do it just because they're feeling a little playful, curious about the structure. Looks strange. It might smell strange. Sometimes fish will jump out of the water and get caught on the bottom of the pontoon, sort of out of the water. And of course, bears smell that. We've had bears climb on the bridge and try to tear the boards off the bottom of the bridge to get to a fish that's stuck underneath. It's fairly rare. That doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. And bears can certainly climb on the bridge if they want to. So she's found another fish. Let's take a moment and try to see how much of that fish she consumes. So to me, it looked like she ate most of that fish. Certainly ate the tail, the skin, most of the flesh. Didn't really look like she investigated the head. And whatever she is eating now is not nearly as fresh as that last one. So often I am asked, why is a bear doing this? Why would a bear do that? If you were to ask me the question right now, well, why would a bear tend to eat a fairly fresh-looking dead salmon and then all of a sudden eat something that looks just like mush? I would have to say, of course, I don't know. That's one of those questions where we would have to, give the bear a survey. Sure, each one of them has their own sort of unique palate that they on their tongue, and it's quite likely that bears prefer, to eat different certain bears like to eat different parts of the fish compared to another bear. The pickings are very easy in the spot in the river that she's hanging out right now. You see her, she'll eat the fish really in the same manner each time. In the back or bite it on the stomach, start to peel the skin off. And the fish are generally so soft right now that once the skin is peeled off, you can just pull the whole tail off. Over the last couple of 410 here, caught and consumed a couple of dead salmon. Most of the fish she ended up eating. Each one of those fish could be about 2,000 calories apiece. So just within 5 minutes, again, nearly 4,000 calories. And she's expending very little energy moving through the water like this. The current is strong. I mean, if I'm going to try to swim upstream like she is, I have to work. I have to work hard to do it. But bears are much more buoyant, especially at this time of the year, than I am, carrying, so much body mass, so much body fat on them. They float very easily. They have a hard time diving, actually, at this time of the year if they want to try to do that, because they are carrying so much body fat. They're also, of course, incredibly strong, so that what may feel like a strong current to me certainly is not necessarily what the bears are experiencing. I'm going to zoom out and give you a little bit of context of where she is. We followed her upstream, but I was zoomed in most of the time. So now she's upstream of the bridge. So she's sort of in a wedge of water. You can see that channel of water on the far side coming into where she's sitting. There's another channel of water that is flowing from the lower left corner in her direction. So where she's sitting, that wedge that's just downstream of that grassy island, that's a 83 investigated. He knew there were dead and dying fish there. 410 knows there were dead and dying fish right in that eddy on the lee side of that grassy island. And it's so good time, and I was only planning on sticking with you for an hour this morning. Tomorrow I will be back online for a live chat at 10:30 a.m. Alaska time, and I will be interviewing Leslie Scora, who's Katmai's bear monitor. So at that time she'll had just finished a bear monitoring session, so we'll talk about what she's seen, her methodology for collecting data, how that data is important to your bear watching experience and the management of Brooks River bears here. So please join me for that at 10 a.m. Alaska time, or excuse me, 10:30 a.m. Alaska time tomorrow. In the meantime, there will be plenty of bear action continuing out into the middle of October here, and even later. We'll probably see bears on bear cam until November sometime. And I just tuned into the comments on explore.org. Again, I wasn't monitoring the comments during this chat, but I do see one comment from St. Ambrose School in the Barbados, so thanks for watching. And I know we have people from all over the world watching the cams, which is quite wonderful that we can try to give everyone a Katmai experience if you don't have the opportunity to visit. But continue to enjoy the bears, continue to enjoy bears like 410 and 83 that we've taken a close look at this morning. If you want some, a little bit of a math project, count how many salmon this bear is catching this morning if he's on the cam. Calculate how many calories that might be. And I think you'll find that each one of these bears is doing quite well for themselves at this time of the year, and they're trying to get ahead of the game in survival and hibernation. So 410, swimming upstream right now. It's a little bit after 10 o'clock, so I'm going to call it a morning. We'll be joining you tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Alaska time for Katmai's Bear Monitor. But I hope you enjoyed the broadcast this morning, and enjoy the rest of your day.